Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Feeling Thursday Battle Lounge with the 2MK team. Today we continue to expand and check our methods for playing this game more quickly than we've been playing before. Our recent matches with other people randomly have been a little bit better on stopping the very standard hop-based offense and somewhat ignoring those who back off too much. But this isn't necessarily enough to get any of your own offense started, as once you move toward your opponent, it's more likely that they will then try to use the same techniques again. So you have to be a little bit faster and a little more ready in other ways, or they're just going to react to whatever you do, and you won't get anywhere at all. Opening up your opponent in this game has to do largely with baiting them into having reactions that don't work, as the game relatively isn't fast enough that you can just do whatever you want and your opponent then has to react in time and will miss. So you do get to play certain types of footsies, but overall, accuracy isn't quite the correct thing to say here, but you are definitely looking for a way to get into a position. So this is partially why we start off with things like the dashing and specific styles of jumping and throwing, because at the end of the day, you have to get into position for anything to work. But of course, before that, you had to have some understanding of what position you were supposed to be trying to get in the first place. And that is why we had to start by explaining things about the dashes and the anti-hop and other things. It's best to spend most of your time focused on exactly your position on the screen relative to your opponent's options, rather than trying to get into a strike range for them, because it's too easy to move around in this game. That won't generally pay off on its own. And as you know, since mostly this game's meter is used for good punish timings and big attack combos, you generally don't spend a lot of time using your meter to do quote-unquote safer moves to get you into position. Some characters do still do this, but many of them don't really have the purpose of meter to be used that way. You have enough options for movement that the meter isn't the method to use.
Final round. Ready? Go!
If anything, you should combine the two thought processes. Once you have managed to get close enough to your opponent in the first place, such that they had some incorrect reaction and blocked perhaps, well, that you blocked, there's a decent chance that that reaction, if you baited it correctly, is one of the few things you can just get a quick punish on with your own meter. So you can look out for those opportunities more and more as you push forward. Press in on the opponent, see if you can get them to make an error, and if they are afraid of making that type of error, then go for an actual attack. But the error isn't usually whiffing and opening themselves up completely, it's rather using something less safe that you can then use your own meter to punish.
Select members. order. Select stage. Nothing will stop this show.
When thinking about how to play against particular players, or even just what you're working on, it may cause you to change the team order that you're using. For example, here, Joe has so much good range in situations that, again, if I'm not playing Mary, which is the actual way I'm supposed to aim to win this, it's probably best to have Shermie take the space, mainly because she tends to retreat in spaces that are helpful, and is better at tricking Joe into doing things. Because with her additional range, the opposing player spends more time thinking about what she might do, and you have more time to get away with things. There, for example, could have been baited into something more dangerous. And here, it's a similar thing. Knowing that the invincibility will last long enough to cause that to happen. Literally empty jump cross up super. Not quite a punish, but it's the same sort of thing, because I was in the mindset for it. Similarly here, we go into the next round. We're still basically even because this is what I'm trying to demonstrate right now. And Chris is a character with a lot of ways to get closer to Kukri quite quickly.
Ready? Go!
But the intention you have to have when you're doing this is to cause Kukri to have responses to things. And just make those responses wrong in some way. But in this case, right, there we go. The expectation that eventually you would get the opportunity to, for example, I could have burned meter on that and would have had probably a better outcome. Because I could then continue to earn more of it. Whereas, in this case, I'm going with the opposite option. Iori now has lots of spacing and ways to get through this with tons of meter. So as you can see, my opponent spends a lot of time having to avoid dealing with things that would otherwise be probably opportunities for a different character. The entire match morphs because Kukri can no longer try the same styles of attack, given the chance that they might not work. And if they don't work, then Iori with enough meter is going to really put the hurt on.
First order.
私のこと見守っててください。
Select stage. Get ready for a battle of
Today, if you would like to join us, the lounge is not created by me, as we have found that the only way to resolve this problem is to have Indigo Wolf be the one to create the lounge. This is still basically our NA lounge, but in this case our lounge host
Round one. Ready?
is not actually in the same geographical location to that point, and you might therefore see some differences in ping, but it's more or less the same. You should expect to have approximately the same quality of connection to all of us at the moment. No one has joined that would have any drastically different input.
Player one wins. Round two. Ready? Go!
Here we see another example of the same sort of thing. Our easel player is trying to find a way to play footsies, but that's not really the goal here. Joe's mid-range game is not quite good enough where that playing footsies or trying to set up playing footsies is in any way a win condition. But of course, if you are using very long telegraphed attacks, you're in the same space. And basically you're just guessing. There you go. Now we see just one change, and probably it would make a lot of difference, because between that and her light kick, she has a lot of control of positions that aren't really footsies so much as they are a way to make the opponent react, but not react to something that she can actually be stopped in.
Two wins.
ナイスコンビネーション。
Whereas for Kukri, you actually do want to try to play footsies and try to use the long telegraph moves, because his main ways of stopping you from doing this are the things that cause him to whiff. So by getting through that part of the match, she's able to go back to playing what she actually wants to play,
Player one wins.
but unfortunately, not with enough health to actually make it work.
さあ、始めましょう。
Round
Fortunately, Chizuru is quite as good at basically the same sorts of things. Fairly telegraphed moves, and so on. The main concern, the main thing you have to think about is, you're not doing these moves because you expect them to hit. You're doing these moves because you expect your opponent to dodge. And once you expect your opponent to dodge, once you, the player, have decided, I am doing this because I expect you to dodge, it's much easier to plan what follows that dodge, rather than hitting a button in a scramble because you're not sure what to do. And similarly here, having the punish ready would have probably been enough. It is very important to practice your punishes, and we have multiple bots to get you there as need be. But understanding which punish you want to use is not really a sort of thing a bot can outright tell you unless it's exactly that character that is available.
members.
精一杯頑張りますね
Select order.
任せてちょうだい
Select stage. It's about to be a party up in here!
So let's take that concept of position to punish situations a little bit more seriously from this side. Because sure, me neutral versus Joe works well, but she also does have to do some other things.
Round one. Ready? Go!
じゃじゃーんやっ
That is a good way to get a lot of advantage. And once you've got it, he's not terribly effective. It's easy to evade most of his attacks, and he's relatively easy to end here. See, here we can also reduce the amount of actual damage he's doing quite heavily, without doing too much work on Shermie's side at all.
行くわよ
Bold, but still good enough.
あは使え
Player one.
In fact, my opponent's decisions were generally not good because the reason that they're working has more to do with the fact that I'm expecting them to play more seriously than because they're good ideas. This is a common thing that you have to deal with when you are playing people who are not used to a specific situation or who have been placed in a situation that they don't necessarily have a good counter to. That, for example, was a big risk of a specific type, but it didn't exactly fail.
Player two wins.
楽しかったですはい
If anything, my opponent spent more time whiffing large moves than directly planning anything effective, which is kind of a problem when you're playing against someone who has more meter than you.
Player one wins.
Sound of music.
Overall, the problem you face when you fight this way is that an opponent who is patient enough will just whiff punish you, actually whiff punish you, and you won't be able to do anything.
Burn to fight. Ready? Go!
But they do need to have the meter. So if you can manage to prevent this sort of player from having enough meter to kill you, it's usually not as bad.
Player two wins.
King is not as subject to this problem, but She is also the one you can actually trick into making errors more often.
Final round. Ready? Go! そして死ね
レイドのストライクレイドのストライクレイドのストライク
どうした
Usually that one.
どうした
Thought I was gonna get whip punish on that.
レイドのストライク
このままでは終わらんぞ
熱くなりすぎじゃないかい。そんなんじゃ取れる勝機見逃すよ。
Select member. Select order. Yosh! パパッと片付けてやるぜ Select stage. Get ready for a battle of titans! You. Round one. Ready? Go! Here! See! Hot! Bucket! You talk it! You hot! You hot! Moroi! Round two wins! 喧嘩が強い上に男前 Burn to fight. Ready? Go! Music. 始めよう Round 3 Ready? Go!
イジングだ。やったどこ見てる。ライジン剣こいつはどうだ。それは甘いぜ。僕もその相手に一個ライジン剣フリアライジン剣トラップショットライジン剣まだ終わりじゃない。レイドストライクノートラップショット
Nothing will stop this show!
Yashiro!
Round one! Ready? Go! Stand your ground. Ready? Go! Learn to fight. Ready? Go! No! No! Player 1 wins! See you next time! Lady,
始めましょう
stand your ground. Ready? Go!
はい
こいつはどうだライジン剣
そこ払う
ほらここ見てる
これがあなたのはい鏡に映るのが真実のみ極めます
Player 2 wins!
あなたでは私に勝てない
Final round. Ready? Go!
はいさあ
Winner!
はい気に入ったぞリングの上でまた会おう
Select members.
怖いな
Select order.
あんまり期待しないでね
Select stage. Nothing will stop this show.
Yashiro!
Round 1. Ready? Go! Here!
とやとはい後ろですてや
こっちだ。
はいと
ほら。
とてや
こっちだ。
や上です
Player 2 wins!
楽しかったですはい
On the last stream that I played, I believe we went through the other side of this with sure me going first so I could work on specific parts of neutral, but as you can see there, I really didn't play much neutral. Never had the intention to do it and didn't end up doing much of it.
Player 1 wins. See you next time.
I had one tool I was supposed to use but didn't. But overall, it wasn't the same. Here, similarly, neutral is not the thing I'm thinking about or aiming for. In fact, guard cancel is going to come up more often than pretty much anything else in this matchup. One of the few characters that actually hits her out of that. I'm gonna have to spend it. I didn't want to spend it. Should have baited it.
Player 1 wins. Thank you. Round 4. Ready? Go!
Need that to light.
Player 2 wins.
In this case, it's a lot about knowing exactly which of Iori's moves will go through exactly which of Benimaru's moves. Otherwise, you're reduced to playing the very normal version of the matchup, which is not a lot of fun.
Ready?
I continue to be surprised I actually get whip punished by that sometimes. But the perfect read, the only actual role that I think in the entire match was the one to get out of that. But again, making that sort of read is not terribly hard if the focus you're playing the game with is how can I make my opponent miss? How can I make them think about something that isn't correct? This is actually normally a secondary skill in games, and I think by some standards it's a secondary skill in this game. But once you've learned your max combos, if we take those aside and put them in their own category of how much damage can you throw out, I'm not really sure that hop pressure is more important than being able to make your opponent miss. It's just that because the game is so relatively high damage and because the first order strategy has so much hop and hop defense in it, if you know how to do those really well and your opponent can't stop you, this part never comes up. Similarly, if you've managed to use the hop, even if your opponent can block it, but they can't react to it, the problem is simply that they will end up having to deal with your crouch ledge, kick pressure, or anything along those lines that you can't actually just knock a person out of. You have to knock them out of the hop to prevent there from being a pressure situation, and the pressure situation you have to get out of some other way. The point is that it's a very plain situation. Chances are that both players know exactly what's happening, and you could probably just program something to do them. In fact, we've been working more and more about trying to specifically get bots to do this more often, since it's so effective as a thing you have to learn how to deal with. In many situations in games like this, that's one of your biggest problems. Knowing how to block whatever it is your opponent is doing falls secondary to, can I actually just stop you from doing it at all? Because chances are, if people realize you're defensive, they'll use whatever move puts them into a position where they get pressure after it, simply because you're likely to let them get away with it. This is unfortunately a really common problem in this game with certain characters. If you do think the person you're fighting is good at blocking, but you have a really long animation move that could be interrupted but probably won't be if they're playing defensively, then often that move is safe and you can use it to get in on an opponent who is playing too defensively. That's the entire point of such moves most of the time, because they're not necessarily all that dangerous as a core concept. This sort of thing leads to the situation where King's Venom Strike in the air, whether or not this is a good idea for her to use, has more to do with the distance between you. It might feel like it's generally a good idea, but you can just roll that. If you're running forward anyway, there's a specific point at which if you roll it, it's a good idea for you. There's no downside to doing so. But that's a good example. That move is actually stoppable. Not easily stoppable, but Benimaru's rush can be dealt with. It's just that if you are expecting to have to block because of some other aspect of the fight, he gets to do it, get away with it, and basically be in a decent position for himself. This is why, in fact, you'll notice that one of the weird things that happens when characters like King and Geese use their EX air version of the Venom Strike or Shibuken, one of the main things it does is change it so that they fall after using it instead of the opposite. They don't hang in the air longer, they don't get more air time, because that's not really what you want. In a game where you would have to find your way through the projectiles in various active frames, you'd want a lot more time in the air, just for the sake of it being fair to the other side, really. But here, you want to fall as quickly as possible because it helps you mislead the opponent. They see the same move they've been trying to deal with the whole time, they try to deal with having to roll it, but you're already down, and you can therefore do some other things. Notice also that it pushes her back even further, giving her a chance to use that, let's say, complication of spacing to prevent people from getting to her. If she does it high enough in the air, that's going to be a problem for anyone because she goes flying backward, and her height at the time she does the move determines how far away she actually ends up going.
Select members.
あんまり期待しないでね。
order.
あんまり期待しないでね
Ah, yes, the Chris mirror that I've been thinking about for the last 10 minutes. Now this match often actually is footsies, because Chris isn't good at evading Chris. You can jump more and you can do more damage and you can try to react in time, but depending on which exactly your opponent decided to do, you're probably not going to get a lot of benefit out of doing that.
Round 1. Ready?
So, footsies! You can use your various teleport style moves to move around a lot, but it won't necessarily help you if your opponent decided to hit a button. One of us is more aerial than the other, and we probably should just keep it that way, because thinking too much about the other option is not really helpful. So, we know what's going on. We can probably think 2 or 3 steps ahead of what's happening. But the average viewer probably can't, because you're more so watching our minds fight than our characters. I don't like this matchup, I think mostly because when Chris is not effective, he's like quickly dead. And they trade in places that I don't usually expect, so it's a little bit harder to push through that one. Most of the time I'm just trying to get meter. If it happens that I actually deal some damage, that's probably good. This, on the other hand, is relatively easier.
Ready?
Although I think I was supposed to take a back step before I did that this time. One of Angel's problems against Shermie is that she gets caught by this move too easily. And because of her animation length, if I thought it was a good idea to do that move and miffed, there's not much chance that Angel was actually going to land any move after it. This doesn't help or change too much if you go into hop mode, because she just tends to have such a long animation for it that you tend to get caught anyway. Cross-ups will help, but even those are a little bit iffy, so generally, I'd say it's easier to deal with than a lot of other ways of fighting the matchup. Whereas this, because of Shermie's great options for air stuff that has neutral jump power, Chizuru ends up facing the problem that Karin faces in Street Fighter. Get neutral jumped a lot and having to figure out a way to make the opponent not do the same things. Fortunately, that cannot be caught by Shermie. So what might seem like desperation is probably just more so, yeah, you're going to try to grab me, you always do, so just that.
Final round. Ready? Go!
One of Yori's best options in this matchup is to just dash straight up into Chizuru and block. Because the follow-up move she chooses after the first thing she hits is almost always important to think about. And if you're really like, you can do that basically. If if you're very stubborn about it and have enough meter, once they're too close together, she has to guess whether or not to counterattack and try to get spacing, or bait the uppercut. Psychodrama 85.
Select members.
怖いな。
Select order.
俺の伝説をその目に刻みな。
Select stage.
Depending on how long this goes on, this one might be our last on-stream match of the night. Lounge, we don't actually know how long it's going to stay open, but you can expect at least a couple more matches. But we've already gotten one person joining, and I'm not really expecting any others. So let's go into one more try of the aforementioned options and add the one thing that really was necessary for it to work. Step one is to understand that your opponent can't play too offensively when you're playing like this. Second thing to understand is that knowing the exact spot to stand at when you want to roll is key to pretty much all of it. Because the roll serves one additional purpose. It takes your opponent off the jump, mentally. Because if you were worried that you were going to get anti-aired before, this can go away a lot more easily if you figure out how to roll at them safely enough. But again, this roll is not meant to get you to your opponent to deal damage. It's not meant to dodge a move. It's only meant to move you and make them think differently about what's happening.
Ready, go!
The entire point of it most of the time is to be in a position where your opponent can't necessarily easily punish you. But you also don't have to block. Well, rather do anything besides block. That, for example, was a misspacing, but only a little bit of one. This, however, is a much easier match to play now with the same principle, because my opponent wants to run. Mainly because getting Kukri pressure on Chris is kind of difficult. Not because Chris is terribly strong defensively, but because he can do that. You can think of it as Chris being able to cut through a lot of what Kukri normally does. And again, back to the beginning, if I'm playing defensively but I have a really strong reaction that can shut down a thing, it's a lot harder to deal with. And we might be frozen up, but usually this clears itself up in a little while. So in the meantime, while this black screen is here, you can find all of our bots on our website 2-mk.org for multiple games, including this one. this game only saves 1 bot at a time, but we've been making some effort to make it more like 4 to 5 bots at a time, depending on what it is. So we more so have 3 different sets of bots that have been released, and probably are going to go back to working on Robert, though not this week, as this week is most likely disc guidance for CL bot tomorrow, if there's any disc guidance at all, as we're still working out the nuances of CL bot's behavior. She's not quite where I want her to be right now, and if you are a Melty Blood fan, you don't really want to have errors in your accuracy or understanding of matchups. It's one of those games where you have to be on point about nearly everything in terms of movement. And a bot that trains you to have movement that is inaccurate is basically just causing you to lose. Completely terrible. Whether or not we are therefore having that stream tomorrow, you will find on our Twitter 2_MK_FGC. But here we go to our last match of the night. Note my goal here is to basically stop my opponent from thinking about playing the Venom Strike game. Not because I actually intend to do much else, but just because, you know, it's a problem that Chris has often enough that I just want my opponent to think about something else. Why do I always forget how to do his super? I'm not sure it would have worked at any useful point, but I did forget it, which is kind of frustrating for the specific reason that Yori can't do what I need done in the same way. So the meter is not going to pay off in the same way either. Fortunately, at that exact range, King can't necessarily react to that in time and has to block the whole thing. But that brings us to the end of our stream for tonight. Join us possibly tomorrow for our disc guidance segment, and otherwise, we'll probably see you on Saturday for any content we have relative to Dead or Alive 6. This has been Rillian, 14 2MK. Good luck with your training and good night, everyone.